I never used to go on holidays. It's only really been in the last few years that I've decided that just the stress of living here and living my life, running a finance business, is just too much. You need to take time to kind of relax, and whatever this world we're getting used to living in is, if you've paid attention to any of my content before, I'm painting a pretty negative picture. I recently went away for a couple of weeks, 15 days, something like that. It just gave me a little bit of time to get totally out of my normal life, my ins and outs, just chill out and reflect a bit. So I thought I'd do a video a little bit different this time on a few things that I've reflected on that may help a lot of people. I speak with a lot of people about money. That's what I do for my job. I run a finance business. I say this quite often. People come to me and they go, I don't know what to do anymore. Before, it felt like the solutions were obvious, even to kind of people that weren't financially that smart. I'll give you an example. 5 years ago, a lot of people, the obvious answer was just to buy a property somewhere and invest in that. Now people are beginning to understand that actually that might not solve their issues. And so the problems are becoming more complex and the solutions are becoming even more complex. What I've learned about that is that actually quite a lot of people have put their lives on hold since the pandemic. And in 3 or 4 months' time, it's going to be 5 years since that happened. What a lot of people are realizing is that actually I'm getting older. Like, my life is going by. I'm getting older now. I guess that's the realization I come to about after being locked in for such a long time. I was sitting there going, well, hang on, what am I doing here? Like, why am I working a stressful occupation and it feels like my life isn't really going anywhere? And I just decided I needed to take more holidays, and for me, I haven't got there yet, but the end goal is firstly to have a place I can go to 1 or 2 months in the cold Melbourne winters every year. Also, it's a second backup plan just in case Melbourne decides to slide further based on its last 10-year trend. And I think yesterday we had some information from Standard & Poor come out basically telling the Victorian government they have to give up their, the middle metropolitan ring rail tunnel, the thing they said was going to cost $200 billion to build. Standard & Poor, which is the debt rating agency, a global debt rating agency, came out and told the Victorian government, you got to can this project, otherwise we're going to downgrade your credit rating, which basically means interest rates on their borrowing goes up because now it's more risky. So those sorts of things don't turn themselves around. The point I'm trying to get to, I'm going off in a bit of a tangent there, but the point I'm trying to get to is the realization was that we shouldn't really put our lives on pause for anything. It's easy to get caught up and go, okay, well, now we're going to knuckle down here and do this. And that is true in a lot of occasions. But what I've learned out of the last 5 years is a lot of people are putting their lives on pause, and slowly they're starting to realize that, hang on, why am I doing this? That may lead to some difficult questions, but that's the crux of it. I would rather tackle those difficult questions and try and figure out solutions to them than basically do nothing, because people are starting to understand now, hang on, I'm doing nothing, and it feels like my objectives for my life, my goals, my financial goals, they're slowly slipping away. Retirement in the 50s doesn't work anymore, and people are now going, well, I just don't want to be in my 70s and working. On to the second thing is that I said at the top, there's a fair bit of negativity. Just to give you some context, I started learning about the money system really after I started learning about property and supply and demand. I started figuring out, well, it's the supply and demand of credit or the supply and demand of money, probably the same thing or very similar. And yeah, I started learning about that in 2016, 2017, realized actually the money system is not perfect. I think from a normal person's point of view, they think money system's just there, it's meant to work. But then when you start understanding it, you start understanding that, hang on, things are wrong. And it's one of those things, the more research you do into it, the more you realize how effed up it is. The reason why I actually do all of this content is to actually put my hand up and say, hey, something's wrong with this. But anyway, I went on that break and I realized that, okay, I'm doing a lot of negative stuff and it's actually really affecting the way I think sometimes. I went almost the whole time without social media. There was a couple of times I jumped on Twitter and, all these CFMEU unions, all these angry people doing I don't know what you call them, demonstrations or riots or protests or whatever. I just thought, why the hell? Like, I'm filling my brain up with this crap every day. It's been a couple of weeks since I came back, and I actually haven't looked at Twitter that much, or any social media, to be honest. A lot of YouTube comments on my videos tend to have a go. Not a lot. Most of them are positive, but the negative ones tend to hit you a lot. But what I came to, despite all this negativity, is I'm here because I choose to be here. The reason for that is because really I think if I was 10 years younger, I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I've had. I wouldn't have been able to get into buying a home. Definitely, because house prices got away from us. When I bought the home, I used the little equity I had to start a business. I wouldn't have had that opportunity. I feel like people under 40, or I should actually say people that don't have a home, just getting a raw deal. And the longer time goes by, the same kind of decision making, the same approach to thinking our policymakers are going to have. And the trend's just going to continue, and it's going to push young people out of all of these opportunities. I don't like it. It just means people are more angrier. Why should people get an education if they can't afford a house? Or the next crisis is going to be a retirement crisis, in my opinion. It pushes people the other way. And once there's no order and people aren't in a system anymore, what do? Well, crime and drugs are now on the table, and that fouls the place up for the rest of us. So it's just not fair. Like that's old school Aussie values, is that it isn't fair. I'm here because I choose to be here, even though it's a bit of a struggle sometimes. The third thing I learned I want to talk about, when you touch down in third world countries or second world countries, is when you land in a major city, because you can smell it. The smell's inescapable. You kind of forget about it, and then when you touch down again, you're like, oh yeah, this is where I am. But the thing is, despite all the negativities of these sorts of places, and there are large problems, unsafe water, if you can smell sewage, it's probably not healthy for you, child sex slavery, genuine poverty, not like the poverty we have here, a different level of poverty, generational poverty, which is the risk we have coming if we don't change things, in my opinion. But there's one thing you realize when you go to those places, and that's that people are a lot happier than what they are here. I'm not talking like, oh, they're a little bit happier. They are a lot happier than what your average Australian is. And I talk with a lot of people for my job, and it's always around money. And I feel like we've just monetized our lives too much, and we're a bit lost in that way. Whereas it's interesting, these people don't have anything, but they've got themselves and they choose to be happy. That's what I've learned out of my trip away. Don't put your life on pause. I'm here because I choose to be here, and so are you. What you decide to do after realizing that is up to you. And happiness is a choice. You can wake up every morning, and it's actually a mindset. And I think because times are so negative, we're actually forgetting that a lot. Anyway, that's what I learned. Let us know what you think in your comments. Cheers.